started. Good morning or afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are. Welcome back to the third session of day 2 of the 2023 North American Virtual Reference Conference. My name is Sarah Pate. I'm the coordinator of the ASCWA, which is the Statewide Virtual Reference Cooperative in Washington State, and I'll be your moderator for the following session. Attendees, your video and audio have been turned off for the session, but if you have questions, please use the Q&A section. After both of our lightning talks, we'll have a period for Q&A. But please feel free to put your questions in Q&A at any point, and also use the chat to interact with each other if you'd like to. I'll be giving 2-minute warnings to our presenters before each of their sessions are end, and also be helping to get your questions to them. And so our first presentation today is meeting students where they are to boost your stats, proactive slide out chat for point of need service. And so I would like to welcome Kelli, Mindy, and Gary. Please introduce yourselves and take it away for the first 20 minutes.
Yeah, well, let me go ahead and share my screen. We have a slide to introduce ourselves, so we'll do it there. So live. Thank you all for coming to our presentation. We're going to kind of go back and forth and share what we're talking about, but I will be controlling the slides, so I really have the power here. All right. So give us a chance.
Oh, go ahead, Gary. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, you're
Okay.
talking about Kelli.
All right. Well, thank you. And thank you all for being here today. My name is Kelli Herm. I was most recently at IUPUI as instruction librarian, and just recently moved into a position as reference lead and liaison librarian at Lansing Community College.
My name is Gary Maixner. I'm the User Experience Project Management Librarian at IUPUI. I know I have some colleagues from Ferris State University. I worked there for a number of years up in Michigan as well, but I've been in Indiana since 2018.
Hi, I'm Mindy Cooper. I'm the reference coordinator at IUPUI, which involves training and scheduling chat. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the history of chat at IUPUI. Providing chat reference is not new for staff at University Library. We've been doing it since the spring of 2001. We started with using Meebo, and then we moved to Library Help until we switched to SpringShare, and we'll talk a lot about that in later slides. When we first started doing chat, both clerical staff and librarians monitored chat at the reference desk. Then around 2008, I've been at the library so long that my sense of time is not very good, but around 2008, librarians took the chat away from the desk, and they did it exclusively until 2019 when we started SpringShare, and then Access Services staff joined librarians in providing the chat service in their offices or at our desks.
All right, so you may be wondering how we decided to try the pop-up proactive chat. So one reason is that we weren't receiving that many chats. I can say, like, in a given 2-hour chat shift, like I feel like I had maybe like 1 or 2 at the most beforehand, and then that increased later when we added it. So chat was also always a click away from users, but we wondered, was that 1 click too many? And we also wanted to provide services across our entire website.
Yeah, and what Kelli was referencing there is we did a pretty significant redesign of our library website just about a year ago now. And one of the design goals was to make help available everywhere. So we had this link up there at the top. You can see it circled here. That says get help, and this appeared on all of our web pages, all of our SpringShare pages, all of that. It was something involved, and this was very similar to we had something similar in our old site, but it wasn't as in your face. But even with this change, we weren't getting as many chats as we thought we could. Oh goodness! So what we've added is, and you can kind of see it there on the right hand side, is that chat with us button. This users can always click this to open it up. But we actually have it set to a timer where if a user is on any one web page for 20 seconds or more, it will actually pop up, prompting them to ask us a question. And you can see that it displays just like this. I have another slide showing all this. This is to show we actually have two versions of our library website. We have a light mode and a dark mode. That was one of the kind of unique challenges with doing this, where it would appear on every page. We needed to make sure that we used colors that were visible on both modes of the library website. And what this did for us, I just wanted to share some of our statistics and why this has really helped quite a bit. So you can see a total of how many total chats we got in the upper row there, followed by the number that we successfully answered, how many we actually captured in terms of analytics, which we'll talk about in a bit, and how many we marked as 3 or more on the read scale. So which ones were more complicated and required more sources. We launched this pop-up widget in fall of 2022. And the very last column there shows the percentage increase that we've had between 2021 and 2022 with this pop-up widget. I made this this percentile comparison just between those 2 years because those were both the years that the new library website had been launched. So you can see we had an increase of over 350% in pretty much in our 3 major categories. Some other complications with the data, what I was showing there. So one, we can't negate the fact that COVID-19 was a very trying time for all of us and changed quite a bit of our work. So that's going to change how we can compare semesters from different years. We also had the new library website published in 2021. We also found that the chat staff, and this includes librarians and people working at Access Services, need more training on how to add stats to ref analytics and what the read scale actually means and how to use it. Yeah.
Right. Well, with an increased volume of chats did bring some challenges. So one is single coverage might mean missed chats. So since we were getting so many more, and there's also unpredictability in sharing the workload. And I also found, especially we were getting more questions from our community patrons. So others that were outside of the university that were finding us and asking more questions. Another challenge brought by that were the types of chat questions being asked. So we found there were more specific chats about things found on our website that might be unfamiliar to either librarians or clerical staff. And just some examples based on some questions that I know I received and some of my colleagues received. I was seeing more like local and state genealogy type questions about finding obituaries and local and state history, questions specific to our digital archive collections, patrons asking about things like booking study rooms and conference rooms, and more questions about specific technology and software availability.
Okay, so there are some things that we'd like to do in the near future to improve and maybe extend our service. First, we'd like to look into a chat bot, budget permitting. We don't have a whole lot of money and those things can be expensive. So that's something that we're going to keep an eye on to see if we can incorporate. But definitely this summer, we're going to have training on how to record the stats using the read scale that Gary mentioned. And we're also going to talk about best practices for providing service. And this is something that we're going to do annually as a refresher as we get new staff and just as people forget about how to do the stats. And then we'd also like to talk about the possibility of including our student employees at the service and information desk and providing chat. And that's something that's coming up in the next month or so.
And I was just informed by my colleague Kelly that I must have missed a slide.
Uh-oh.
First slides. Ah, yes, I did. Okay, going back and forth between Zoom and Firefox. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what it took to implement the pop-up widget. So we use SpringShare as our platform, so LibAnswers and LibChat inside of that. Prior, we just had a pop-up, what they call a button widget, where they click a button and it would pop up in a separate window and follow people around. So for this, what we did was we created a slide out chat widget, and we set an auto load delay of 20 seconds. And like I said in my slides talking about the light mode and the dark mode, you have to consider the color carefully to make sure that it can appear on, that it appears prominently on every web page, especially things that can be like quite image heavy. And we use Drupal as our content management system. And this actually made it quite easy for us because we were able to just set the widget into a block and then set the block to be displayed on all of our pages in our Drupal instance. So very easy to do, very easy to make modifications to that as one would need. And then I believe that is all we had to share with everyone today, but you can see that we have our contact information here if you want to ask us anything about this.
Awesome, thank you. And we will come back to Q&A after the next presentation. So next up, we have two staff members of the Montana State University Library, Star and Jessica. Please introduce yourselves and take it away.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks for having us. So, oh, it'd help if I shared my screen. So our presentation is called Psst, Want to Chat? Using Signage to Increase Chat Traffic. I'm Star Bradley, and I am a reference and instruction librarian here at Montana State University. I've been here for almost 7 years, and during that time, I've been staffing our virtual chat service anywhere from 7 to 10 hours per week.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica. I am a service desk supervisor at the Montana State University Library in Bozeman. I watch over our student employees, and I just recently started staffing chat about 4 months ago, so much less than Star, and I've also been here a lot less time than she has, but I've known her for a while, so this is a project we took on together. So the idea of this project was to add welcoming and informational posters to areas throughout the library. We went through a remodel in 2018, and a lot of it, while it does look immensely better than it did, it still has a lot of blank spots that we think could be used for advertising certain services and including in a marketing style plan. This was the first set of posters that we put up. There are 3 slots for them on the wall by our coffee shop and library called Brewed Awakening. And this was kind of a prototype to see what worked, what students liked, what faculty liked. We left polling boxes to get their opinions so we could see what people were interested in and what they interacted with. And so far we've done 3 iterations of them, and we'll show you in the next slide the most current one. But along the way, we did encounter some stumbling blocks. One of those was that each time we wanted to put a poster up, because it was representing the entirety of the library, not just the Learning and Research Services Department, we had to get it approved by our executive team. And while we completely understand where that came from, it did hinder a bit of the speed at which we'd like to get these out and get these tested, so we can kind of figure out what people wanted to work, what they wanted to see, wanted to learn about. Because of that, we also received delays in receiving feedback. So the longer it took for them to give us feedback on these posters, the longer it took us to make a new poster to then get approved again. And it was kind of a cycle that kept continuing in that way. And originally, we weren't planning on promoting chat. This was more of kind of advertising other services and making students especially feel included in our library and make them realize it's a space for them to enjoy and use. But the idea came about after the first round, and we kind of stuck with it for the next 2 rounds after that. I'm going to go to the next slide. Oh, you're already on it. Never mind. This is the most current iteration of posters that we have right now. We wanted to try out Libraries Transform because it's a very stark, very eye-catching kind of design that is a pretty easy template to follow. In this case, we have because learning doesn't stop when the classes end, and the QR code goes to our LibGuides for anything that maybe might be covered in those that wasn't covered in lecture that students especially were confused about. The other one we did was a vendor poster. We received posters from these vendors from their marketing materials, and we decided to go with one of those, just adding our logo onto it and seeing if maybe some of these things like Canopy in this example. We also did DocuSeek, see if any of those had increased traffic after that as well, to kind of inform students of what we had and what we were able to offer. And then the last one is our chat poster. This is the second version. The first one was a little bit plainer than this one, kind of trying to keep the theme of high contrast, eye-catching. But we decided that students don't necessarily want to look at boring posters all the time. So we tried a more comic kind of upbeat theme for this one. And so we said, did you know that librarians are available through chat online or through email? And the QR code at the bottom goes to our site where they can access all of that information.
So also with these posters, one of the things we wanted to do was not have to create all of our posters from scratch because we are not graphic designers. So that was one of the reasons we wanted to use those ALA Libraries Transform posters. And interestingly enough, our library executive team really didn't like those posters at all. In fact, they were really adamant that no one was going to like those posters. They agreed to let us try them, but they were certain that no one was going to like them. And overwhelmingly, in 3 rounds of posters, the Libraries Transform poster has been the #1 most voted poster every time. So that was kind of a nice thing for us to be able to tell library administration that while they may not like something, they are not always the target audience. Our students are the target audience, and this is what the students liked. So we also had a Libraries Transform poster that said, because it's 3 a.m. and you need that journal article, and that QR code went to our journals by title list. And then we had our first one said, because free Wi-Fi shouldn't require a receipt. And that QR code went to the homepage for our Wi-Fi lending program or Wi-Fi hotspot lending program. So we were just trying to promote our various resources. And like Jessica said earlier, we really wanted to start promoting chat again because for some reason in the last few years, the numbers for our chat service have just taken a dive. It used to be a really popular service. People used to use it all the time. And now we'll spend an hour on chat and get 0 chats on a regular basis. So we were hoping that this would drive some chat traffic up. And it did. So we put the posters up in September, and you can see September, our chat numbers are pretty low, and they typically are pretty low anyway. But as soon as these posters went up from October to November, our numbers in chat jumped dramatically. And we tried to compare these numbers to chat numbers from previous years, but because of the COVID pandemic and everything, we just didn't really think comparing the numbers across the last few years was accurate because none of the numbers recently are accurately reflecting what's really happening, maybe. But you can see that in February so far, since we put up the most recent chat poster, we've already had almost as many chats in January as we did for the entirety of, or I'm sorry, in February as we did for the entirety of January. So that was kind of interesting. And I think it might be because we changed the poster and made it more exciting and more bright. And I think people are looking at it more now. And the numbers are kind of showing that that's the case. And also, Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead,
I
Jessica.
was gonna say, and it is difficult to compare because during the height of the pandemic, the library, the physical building was also closed for a very long time. I think it was about 2 or 3 months. So everything had to be on chat or online or virtual. So it was very difficult to compare where now we're doing things mostly in person. It seemed like a bit of a unfair advantage in that case for how many numbers we were getting during COVID than it would be now, since now we can do in-person reference consultations and we can do in-person reference questions as well.
Yeah. And as you can see, our chat numbers are still not where we want them to be, but they're at least trending upwards, which is great. They're still not at the height that we've had them in the past. And one of the reasons for that, we think, is that our library used to have a reference desk, and the reference librarians who were on chat stood at the desk out in front of everybody in the middle of the library. And we got rid of that. And once that reference desk went away and people stopped seeing librarians on the front line that they could just walk past and talk to or chat with, we saw all of our reference numbers go down. So it all kind of ties in together and goes hand in hand. But moving forward, we do want to continue to promote our chat services, and we want to continue to promote some of our other services. So part of our project was on the second floor of our library. You can see there's all these empty white walls. What we would like to do is take some of the posters that we've prototyped that have done well, particularly the library's transform posters, and put them up on some of these blank walls throughout the library, just to kind of brighten up our space and make it more friendly for our students. Because that's one thing that we have heard from students on a regular basis is, yeah, you guys got new furniture. That's great. Your walls are boring. There's nothing there. It looks institutional. It looks plain. It looks stark. I mean, these are some of the comments that we've gotten over the last few years. So we're hoping that with this project, we can not only continue to promote our chat services, but we can beautify our library a little bit as we do both. Do you have anything to add, Jessica?
Not particularly. I did see one chat that I figured I would answer right now just because it came up. The posters are in an area of the library that has a lot of traffic next to our coffee shop. So while people are standing in line to get their coffee, their pastries, their baked goods, things like that, they'll be sitting there, and it's a bit of a captive audience because they'll just be kind of looking around. Your phone gets boring after a while, so they'll look around and see the posters. And because we do have those poll boxes as well, they'll see the poll boxes and go over and interact with them like, oh, I should tell them which one I like. It takes 2 seconds. So that was one thing I wanted to add. Oh, no worries, Kelly, that's fine.
And that's one other thing that we can talk about as a fun thing that came out of this is because we put the polling box up asking students to tell us which poster they like best. And we didn't ask them to comment. We just put a little piece of paper that had a 1, 2, and a 3 on it and just said, circle the one you like best. And so because they're students, sometimes we get some interesting comments. So we've gotten some comments that have just been like, I don't like any of them. These are all terrible. Some comments that have nothing to do with the posters at all whatsoever. Like, I'm struggling to study at 3 a.m. and I'm sad. We've had students leave little pieces of origami on the voting boxes. I came in one day and we had little golf pencils so that people could mark their votes. And somebody had taken all of the golf pencils and stood them up like little soldiers next to the voting box. So I think just that passive kind of outreach interaction too has added to the project. It's just, I think, shown our students and our population that we want to talk to you, we want to interact with you, and we want to hear what you have to say.
And I think it takes a lot of the pressure off of them too, of like in a polling format where you walk up to them and say, what do you think of this thing? It puts them on the spot a little bit. And I feel like they're less likely to answer, or less likely to get involved because they're like, I don't want to be put on the spot like that. But they can come up at their own leisure and give their opinion, which we take into consideration when we start making other posters every time we change them out. And right now they're kind of in a testing period, so we don't have a cohesive theme or anything yet. We just want to see what is received well with students. We're just kind of trying a collage of different types to see what people like. And then we'll probably end up doing a theme as we progress through this experiment.
Yep. And one thing to note with the colors we're using is we are using our university's brand colors. So just if anybody has issues with the colors, these are our university brand colors, and we're kind of tied to those.
Yep.
The polling was not digital, it was physical. There was an actual plastic box underneath the posters where people could just drop in a piece of paper and circle which one. So. Thank you for your time. And here's our contact information.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much to both groups. That was a really great pairing. We do have a lot of questions in the Q&A, and some I've grabbed from chat as well. I think the first one in the Q&A got answered already, but the second, for our first group, does the pop-up beep? I'm thinking of the advantages and disadvantages of that. What I think is a similar pop-up comes up on a site I use and keeps beeping in an annoying way.
So ours does not beep. I don't know if SpringShare even would allow it to beep. If you are considering something like that, something I would caution against. So my work primarily is on maintaining the library website and designing it, and a big part of that is accessibility. As it currently stands, there are no guidelines for accessibility standards, standards or guidelines related to like attention and those kinds of things. But we know that the more motion that you have on a web page and the more audio you have on a web page, the more it can disrupt someone's concentration. And so from an accessibility standpoint, even if I thought we had the power to add a beeping, I think the pop-up is enough of kind of a trigger that I wouldn't look at implementing something like that. Like I said, there are no guidelines or rules on that from an accessibility standpoint. That's sort of a best practice that I use in my work. So,
thank you. Next question. When you receive a chat question, can you tell if the question is initiated by a patron before 20 seconds or if the question is a result of the pop-up widget? I wonder if there are any differences between these two types of questions.
So I don't believe that we can see when it was initiated versus how long they were sitting on a page prior. But one of the things that SpringShare does do is it tells you the I think they call it the reference URL or something like that. So you can actually see what web page that they are on when they initiate that chat with you. And I found that helpful. So just for an example, and this is something that Kelli brought up in her example of challenges, we have 2 room reservation systems in our library, one for study rooms and one for conference rooms. And so sometimes you get a question saying, how do I reserve a room in the library? You don't know necessarily what system they're talking about. The reason for that is because the library manages our study rooms and the university writ large manages our conference room. So this is not something that we've done by choice necessarily. But it's helpful to see what URLs they're coming from. And you could even probably get in and look at the data on the back end and say, oh, well, these are the pages that people are talking to us the most, and maybe try to fix those up. We can't do anything about the conference rooms, unfortunately.
Okay, the next question also came in during the first presentation, and it says, how do you do training, and does it include cultural responsiveness?
I don't think we've thought of that, have we? Training, we did training in 2019 when the staff joined the librarians in doing chat. So we all got together and did training. We talked about best practices. And we sort of, COVID hit and that screwed everything up, and we didn't really go back to it. So it's something that we need to go back to, because since then we've had new staff, and people have had other things to worry about, and maybe they've forgotten about best practices. And we just learned that there are some librarians that didn't know they had to do stats. which totally screwed up our stats. So we have to look at that too. But no, I don't think we, initially, I was not the reference coordinator in 2019. That's a new role for me. So, I wasn't involved in training, so I can't really speak to the cultural. I don't remember that we did that, but that would be something that we definitely need to think about, because that's something that's very important at our library. So I definitely think that that's something that we need to think about as we're developing our training for the summer. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and to add on what Mindy said, we actually just had a meeting last week to talk about the training we're going to be doing this summer with everyone that's on that helps with chat reference. Since 2019, it has mainly been when someone new gets hired that we know will do reference chat, they will have like 2 or 3 hours with me because I'm our spring share admin as well. So I spend about 3 hours with them just going over all of the spring share stuff, and that includes chat. But it is more of a mechanical kind of thing, like this is how you answer a chat, here's how you add stats, right? Less on best practices.
Okay, next question, also for the first group. Can you share how you work together to norm questions for the read scale?
The reads, I'll be honest, the read scale really messes with people. And that's something that is very confusing. I work at the Service and Information Desk, and we use the read scale to do our stats as well at the desk. And it really does confuse people. So that is something that we're going to have to look at in our training for the summer, so that we're all on the same page with read. Basically, what throws people off is, not that the read scale does not say how difficult a question is, it's how involved it is, how many resources you need to use to answer the question. And that is I think that's the point of confusion for people, that they try to think, well, if it's a 5, then it's a really hard question that I don't know anything about. But no, a 5 is you're using a ton of resources and probably referring to a subject liaison at that point. So we haven't really gotten into that norming thing. Some of us understand it, some of us don't. So we need to get to a point where we all understand it the same way, if that makes sense. Hopefully that answers your question. So we really haven't done any norming. We're going to do that though. We've kind of done it in bits and pieces where there's a group of us that know what's going on with that and others that are confused, and so that definitely messes up our stats too.
Thank you. Next question is for the poster crew. I'm curious to know why your library admin didn't like the ALA posters. Did they share why they thought they were not useful?
Oh, I'm happy to speak to that. They thought they were too plain and had too much blank space. And they also thought the messages were confusing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we actually stood our ground and we said, hey, these come directly from ALA. We think they're great. And we think they're really going to speak to students.
Mm-hmm.
And we were right.
They really seemed to enjoy them, which was great.
Thank you. Another question about the posters is, who designed your posters? I know you went over a few of those, like some of the vendor ones, but ones that you made.
Yeah, so the vendor ones came from the vendors. The ALA ones, the Libraries Transform, which is a template that we use from the ALA with their guidelines. And then I designed the other poster. And usually anything that involves the creative aspect of what we want to advertise is usually me with Star's input and corrections.
Yes. So Jessica designs the posters and I stand behind her and go, can you fix that just a little bit? And can you move that to the right just a little? So mostly Jessica.
Exactly.
Nice. What software do you use?
I use Canva for the most part.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
And another poster question, are you using these posters for digital marketing as well? Wondering how these concepts can be used with a primarily online student body.
So that's a yes or no question. Yes and no question. We are not using the posters digitally anywhere. However, when we had the Canva poster up, we also had a Canva, or we talked about having a banner in Primo advertising Canopy at the same time. I think I said Canva, I meant Canopy. So we actually didn't do that, but it is something that we're talking about doing. So we might be advertising that way online, but we're not using the exact posters.
We do want to advertise them eventually. Our library is a bit disjointed between the departments. So when it comes to our social media, if we want to post on there, that's done by our administration. We don't have a marketing plan or marketing managers or anything like that. So it would be more coming up with how to give it to them to package to put onto our social media. But as far as our website goes, we definitely talked about the Canopy banner as well, and trying to get things on our website to kind of coincide at the same time as what posters we're advertising.
Thank you. Another poster question. Do you keep stats on how often people use the QR codes on the posters to get to a web page?
We do not. That is something we just thought of probably, I would say, last week. And then on the next iteration, we probably will implement that and use a different QR code generator that will track that traffic. So far, the only thing that we can do is see if there are increases in traffic on the pages that we've been putting the URL of the QR code on the posters. So, but we plan on doing that definitely.
Okay, and then there were some questions that came in via chat as well. This one came in during the poster session. These all look nice, but did you not go with a theme on purpose?
Yes, we definitely on purpose did not pick a theme because we wanted the students to pick a theme. We wanted to see what spoke to the students. So we just deliberately chose 3 distinct looks each time. That was completely on purpose.
I think the only theming that we had was that we had to use our school and library colors. That was the only theming we had. Otherwise, the students are the ones who use the space, and we pretty much work for them with their tuition. They help us out. So we want to make sure that they get to pick what we're doing in the library for all of our themes.
And then the next question that came into chat about the posters, has traffic increased in Canopy after using the vendor poster?
Actually, yes. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but our electronic resources librarian has been tracking those numbers, and she just showed us a chart last week. And again, I don't have the exact numbers, but there was a giant spike in Canopy usage after the poster went up. So that was great to see.
Nice. Another poster question for you from chat. How often do you swap out posters?
How often do we, or how often do we want to?
Important distinction. As of right now, we are aiming for about once a month, just so we get plenty of polls from students and anyone who interacts with it. And that also gives us time to get it approved through our executive team. Realistically, we'd like to change them as many times as we want, but as of right now, this third one that we've done, this third round of posters, has been out for about 2 months. Just with winter break and everything else going on, it's been a little bit of a challenge to get those taken care of, but typically about once a month is what we're doing right now.
Okay, and then a couple of sort of related questions. One, are the physical posters framed? And then I'm not sure if you answered this earlier when we were talking about the digital versions, but do you also put these posters in digital signage frames on your campus? I know you talked about the website.
So they are framed. They're in acrylic poster holders. They're 24 by 36, and they're mounted. The poster holders are mounted to the wall. So all we do is slide the poster out, and then I should say Jessica slides the poster out and then slides the new one in. You can't tell by looking. I'm not very tall, so I can't actually reach where the posters are. So my wonderful colleague, who is much taller than I am, has the distinction of changing the posters every time.
And we don't have any digital signage in the library. We have a couple of TVs that kind of cycle through information. And we could most likely put things on those, but right now they're used more for events that will be happening in the library or around campus. And that's pretty much a stationary screen with like alternating like a single like picture widgets on it. That is something that we are looking into though on a broader spectrum with this signage. We want to do more signage, and we want to do more digital signage as well.
Thank you. Another chat question, this time for the widget group. They said they may have missed this with the first group, but how often does the chat widget slide out? I think you answered that it's 20 seconds, but they were also asking if each time a patron navigates to a new page, does that 20 seconds sort of start over again, or how does that work?
I believe that it does reset every time they go to a web page. There might be a way to kind of have like a cookie set up where it doesn't, like after it's been dismissed once, it won't pop up again, but we have it set every web page. If they spend more than 20 seconds on the web page, then it'll come up. If you look at the actual stats of our web page usage, though, most people aren't on web pages for more than that most of the time.
And sort of a related question in the Q&A for Kelli, Gary, and Mindy, has there been any feedback, or do you all have thoughts about the pop-up placement on the page, and the fact that it follows across pages and the frequency of the pop-out? Like, is this something that you've played around with, the time period and that sort of thing?
So we haven't had any direct feedback from patrons. So I do have a form that's at the footer of every web page asking for feedback on the website. We don't get a whole lot through there anymore. When the new website launched, we got a lot, as you can imagine. But everyone in the library knows I'm the person to send all the complaints to. And when I go and talk to people, I tell them I'm the person to complain to. We haven't had any complaints. And I think that we can say that with the increase of chats that it has been pretty successful. In terms of where it got placed on the page, we chose that specific location based on our design of the website. So a lot of our information kind of sits, we do left justified, all of those kinds of things. And we have our whole website is kind of in these column layout of content in the center, and then if there's any extra kind of navigation, it sits in another small column on the right hand side. So just so it didn't conflict with any other parts of the web page across all of the web pages. And because I didn't want to put it at the bottom of the website, that was another option. That's why we've put it over on that right hand side. So there might be a case to be made to move that, but I think that's probably close to optimal for the way we have ours laid out and ours designed.
And I will say we have a month-long event at University Library called I Heart UL, where we give students the opportunity to post little post-it notes about what they like and don't like about the library and services, whatever it is. We get all kinds of weird things too. But it'll be interesting to see when we go through those notes if anything comes up. And that would be a good place for them to provide that information to us. And we read every note, no matter what it says.
Okay, well, thank you all so much. I think we got through that very long list of questions. That's always a good sign when folks have follow-up. So thank you all so much for being here and presenting about your library's work. Really appreciate it. These recordings will be up within a month on the website for the conference. And I'm also going to this time remember to put in the chat a link to the survey. So please do share your feedback on any and all of the sessions you've attended. Yeah, thanks again for being here, everyone.